It is another edition of Legends Territory. Scott Braun Erik Kratz, and thank you to the MLB Players Alumni Association for setting up all these great interviews with former players. And for more information on your favorite former players, check out baseballalumni.com. Also, if you're listening to this, you can watch it on YouTube, and then vice versa. If you're watching, you can listen to it wherever you get your pods. So we've got a 12-year big leaguer coming through, former Silver Slugger award-winning second baseman entering the chat. And also, Kratz, just like us in the media, current Pittsburgh Pirates TV analyst. You can see him when you're watching some Pirates games. Neil Walker joining us right now. Neil, how you doing, man? How's life?
Hey, Scott and Eric, thank you so much for having me on. We're doing good. The weather has turned here in Western Pennsylvania, but nonetheless, the hot stove seems to be heating up at the winter meetings, and my Steelers are cooling down a little bit.
Yeah, and you're there full time, right?
Yeah, we're here just north of the city of Pittsburgh full time. So I got a great gig. I get to enjoy the falls here and kind of grind through the winter. But once the spring and summer comes, what I'm doing with the broadcasting stuff has been really fun and something that I've really enjoyed from day one. So I'm looking forward to doing more as time continues.
As an ex-teammate, you have a face for radio, so I'm really glad that you're on TV. So I'm glad you decided to wear your flannel here with us, that you're able to just show us your big TV. Like, it's a humble brag this whole time for you, and your ice cream counter in the background. So we appreciate
the most amazing thing, Kratz, is that somehow you're running a podcast and you actually talk less in the podcast than you did when you were behind the plate when guys were in the batter's box. There's nobody in the history of baseball that you wanted to or had to tell to shut up during an at-bat than Erik Kratz.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. I can take all of that. I'll never forget when we played against each other. You came up and you were like, oh my gosh. I don't know if you're having a bad day or not, but you were like, oh, just stop, please. So I stopped. I'm a good listener. Some people just talk. I got 2 ears, huge nose, 2 ears. So I appreciate you putting me in my place.
Well, and I was trying to remember the year that we played, the years that we played together in Indianapolis and Pittsburgh. I think, would it have been 9 and 10 or 10 and 11? Is that correct?
9 and 10. 9, we were in Indy together.
Indy, yep.
10, when you got called up in 9, and then 10, we were in Indy. And we'll get into it, but we were in the big leagues together. But we were actually first together. Do you remember where we were first together? This will show if you're a good teammate or not good teammate.
Hold on. Did we play together in winter ball too for a period of time?
No winter ball, but it was close to winter.
Oh, it was the Arizona Fall League.
The Peoria Swarrows. You and I were 2 catchers. I decided I wasn't going to become a utility infielder, switch hitting utility infielder. You clearly saw the way that I caught, and you were like, well, I can't match that, so I'm going to have to change.
Yeah. I remember those days. Yeah.
It was you,
I remember those days very well.
And Guillermo Quiros. And I think you were like 19, 20 years old. I was probably 25-ish, 24, 25. We played together out in Peoria. And then spring training in 2018, we played together in spring. You made the team, and I got fired and sent to AAA with the Yankees.
It was always a pleasure to play with you, Kratzy. Yeah, like I said, I miss those days in the locker room. I miss those days on the field. You're the type of guy that I would rather play with than against. Let's just leave it at that, okay?
That's fair. That's fair. I like that.
Yeah, you don't want to get in a fight with Kratzy either. Let me tell you, we've gone over some of those.
The bear hugs.
Yeah, exactly. Broken pinkies, the whole deal, just from like shaking someone's hand. So I'll get right to it. I mean, the glory days for the Pirates, part of the 14 and 15 postseason teams. Do they win more games if Kratz was on those teams and the Pirates didn't let him go several years before that?
There's no doubt. I still don't fully understand how WAR and how defensive runs saved works, but I know that if there was one thing that Erik Kratz could do, that was he has the gift of gab, and there wasn't many balls getting to the backstop, and he was going to frame pretty well. So let's just say his career WAR was probably up there with the Molinas, and Pudge Rodriguez. I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Okay. All right. This is Neil Walker's Legends territory here. So this isn't about some has been and never will be.
Kratz, that was just me getting into the 14-15 teams. Don't worry, I'm not giving you too much credit.
I want to actually go before the 14-15, Scott. I want to go to your call-up, Neil, when you absolutely were crushing it in AAA. You get called up in 2009 for proverbial cup of coffee. Yep. And this is how I remember it. You tell me if this is wrong, but 2010, you come back to Indianapolis, and I saw a shift in you. Obviously, it was 5 years before we had played together in the Fall League. I saw a shift in you as like a kind of more like a leader in 2010. Like there was some organizational changes where they were like trying to do this whole like militaristic and like, hey, you got to do this and you got to do that. And at this point, you were like the guy who had you had established yourself as somebody who had success, a routine, and you knew what you needed to do. And they were just annihilating us in AAA. And you stood up for the guys and got called up for Akinori Iwamura. Now, I think Pierce got hurt, but I think Iwamura, you were replacing him. And I remember Neil Huntington saying, because I was in AAA, we're watching out for our guys. We're watching out for Pedro Alvarez. We're watching out for Garrett Jones, all the boys, Kutch, all the dudes that were in AAA. And Neil Huntington said, yeah, he's just kind of here for a fill-in. And you went into, and I think he even had a little bit more choice words, and you went on to 5th place, I think, in the Rookie of the Year that year?
Yeah, I think it was around there. And to kind of go back to going into that 2010 season, like you mentioned, in 2009, I got a quick cup of coffee in the big leagues in September, maybe 20 at bats, something like that. But I remember going into that offseason and they said, we want you to play multiple positions. And, Pedro Alvarez is coming behind you at third base. So we don't foresee you playing much there, but we still want you to be able to play there. And so going into the 2010 season in spring training, I was on a mission. I was like, all right, if I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna go down in flames. If I'm gonna get traded, I'm gonna get moved. I'm not gonna make the team. I'm gonna learn all these positions as quickly as possible, from right field to left field, first base, third base, second base. To start that year, I remember being in 2010 to start the year. I remember being in Columbus, Ohio, playing against Columbus, and one of the catchers got hurt on the first day of the season, and it was snowing. It was basically snowing, and they couldn't get a catcher in time to back up the guy that was going to catch that night. And they said, Neil, it was the second day of the season. They said, you can't play this game. We need you to catch bullpens during the game to warm guys up because we have no bullpen catcher and we have no backup catcher. So that's how my 2010 season started. And I mean, that may have been you that got banged up, Eric. I can't fully remember, but I remember just being kind of pissed off. I was just pissed off. And like you said, I knew I knew my strengths at that point. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I had to play multiple positions, and hopefully I got caught a break like I ended up catching with Aki Iwamura going out or not playing well and getting an opportunity and going up. And so I wouldn't have had it any other way. Sure, would I have liked to have been in the big leagues to start my career? I thought I was going to be a big league catcher for my entire career. That didn't happen. And so I found in the game of baseball, you have to just continue to adapt. You have to continue to look at the positive side of things. I could have easily said, well, you don't want me as a catcher, screw you. Send me somewhere else. And I saw it as a challenge. I saw it as something that was something that could help my career. It was still before the time of playing multiple positions was the big thing. You saw very little platooning on the offensive side of things in those, call it 2010 to 2015 years before the quote unquote Ben Zobrist type of players started to come around. So, I mean, but I do remember those days in AAA, Eric, where we were, guys would come into town and they'd have us out there at 12:45 taking early ground balls, doing catching drills for you guys, outfielders doing work, then going into hitting. And I remember thinking to myself, we're in AAA. I'm exhausted by the time the game is starting. Like, this whole military mindset type thing, it might work on the 19, 20, 21-year-olds down in A-ball and AA, but maybe leave us alone a little bit up here at the AAA level.
Yeah, and I remember you stepping up and saying something about it, and they kind of took offense, like, "Oh, you're soft," and you were like, "What?" And you slapped him in the face with the Rookie of the Year that year. And yes, it was me. I hit a double in the first game of the year. It was snowing in Columbus, and I tweaked my hamstring. I ended up just missing the next day, but Luke Carlin was the other catcher that was there that year.
Yes,
so
that's right.
So we were, you. That's a good memory. But I remember you setting. To me, I remember you kind of setting a tone. Everyone's going to remember Andrew McCutcheon, but like you were that guy that was, and you're a hero in Pittsburgh, no doubt. But I felt like that season you set a tone for the rest of the prospects that were coming up, that like you stepped up and you were standing up for the guys for, to me, what I thought was right. Do you feel like you kept a chip on your shoulder towards necessarily like ownership, towards Neil Huntington, toward not like in a vindictive way, but like, dude, I know what I'm doing. I've been around this game for a while. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, whether it's contracts, my teammates, whatever it is. Do you feel like you had a chip on your shoulder in that sense?
Yeah, to a degree. And I think it was more along the lines that somewhat of the circumstances. I'd bounce from catcher to third base to several different positions. And for me, that year that we played together in 2010 to start the season was kind of like a breaking point for me, to the point where I had always performed offensively. I wasn't necessarily a bad defensive player at the places that I was being put, but I really wasn't being foreseen as an everyday at one position guy until I got that opportunity at second base, which was the last place that I thought that I was going to end up. So I think that I didn't necessarily – I did have a chip on my shoulder, but it wasn't necessarily directed toward anybody in general. It was directed more as a challenge to myself. And I also, being from Pittsburgh and understanding really all the way back to the early 90s, the history of the game as well, of the Pittsburgh Pirates too. And I knew that we had some good pieces, and I knew that I had an opportunity to be a part of a team that was kind of going to take things to the next level. So that was kind of my motivation, but also kind of my rallying cry to guys around, like, hey, AAA is not just a stepping stone. It's not just big league guys coming down and waiting to get called back up, and it's not prospects that are there. Like, you can still use this as a jumping point to not only get better, but to challenge yourself from a physical standpoint, mental standpoint, but also have you ready. I mean, in today's game, I see a lot of guys come up and they have a little bit of a deer in the headlights look because, whether it's not being fully prepared for the adjustments that you have to make at the big league level, or just simply being caught up by the bright lights and never having not had success getting up to the big league. So I felt very prepared when I got called up to the big leagues, and I feel very fortunate with that. But certainly looking back, you're like, why am I still here? I'm in AAA. I'm leading the league in so many offensive categories. Like, this doesn't make sense. But I had a good time. I learned a lot from people like yourself, especially. But we had a really good group then too. And of course, going into 12 and 13 in Pittsburgh, things finally took off, and I was just so fortunate to be a part of that.
You're not just a hero in Pittsburgh, you're a hero with many big leaguers then for stepping up also about the military style that was going on at times. So has that chilled out? And if so, do you know what kind of caused that? Because we've even had someone like, say, more current Tyler Glasnow on this show. And he said, hey, difference between Pittsburgh and the Rays for me during my time period, and it was a previous regime now, he's like, was huge because he mentioned the same thing. He's like, the military thing, not my style. I'm not like that. California surfer dude. It's like, I need people to let me do my thing. And it went much better after he left.
Yeah. And being there, you kind of understood the undertones of what was trying to be accomplished. But at the same time, as you mentioned, there were guys that just, you can't push everybody's buttons the exact same way. You have to push guys and motivate guys in different ways. So for some, that mindset worked. It didn't work for me. I wanted to be, I didn't want to be necessarily coddled. I didn't mind getting yelled at. I didn't mind getting pushed, but I also thought there was a time and place for that. So you don't see as much of it. I certainly, being involved in the Pirates organization, that's no longer prevalent whatsoever. and like I said, I do think from a mental skills perspective, you see some organizations that are a little bit more challenge motivated and trying to get the most out of players from different perspectives and really pushing them. But I think that has kind of gone to the wayside a little bit, at least from what I'm hearing across the board. And for me, what do you need to blow the horn at 4:30 in the morning in October during Fall Instructional League to get guys out to run sprints? I'm sorry, but that's this is baseball. Let's spend some time learning how to create an approach as a hitter and to create good chemistry amongst the organization and to try to find get the most out of yourself. It just doesn't work. I mean, guys were going to the beach and putting telephone poles over their head and doing Navy SEALs catwalk type stuff. I fortunately was a little bit older when some of this stuff was happening, but it's pretty amazing to think that those things were going on.
Yes, they were going on, and creating an approach at the plate would probably be a little bit better. Anyway, you hit it perfectly. Before we get to the 13-14, take me to 2012 in Pittsburgh for a extra inning game. This Pirate team, so much for you had to have led up to that moment. You grew up in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Your dad, sorry to hear about his passing, was a guy that, you watched him play. Your uncle, you watched him play. Now you are on the verge of taking your team to the playoffs, and I don't remember the exact date, but Daniel McCutcheon, the white Cutch and the black Cutch, the only two that I ever met in my life, is on the mound, and McHenry's behind the plate, and a phantom tag, or as they thought was a phantom tag, kind of derailed your season. Did you feel like as a Pirate fan growing up and as a current Pirate, you felt like at the end of that season, holy crap, we may never make the playoffs if this is what derails us?
Yeah, and we got out of the blocks really hot in 2012, and I can't tell you how hot in April, May, and June, but we were on fire. But we also we got pretty taxed, especially in the bullpen and the pitching department. So we felt like it was going to be kind of difficult to keep that recipe of winning these close games, winning these 1- and 2-run games, and continuing to progress as a group. And there was a lot of guys that have been together in the minor leagues and haven't necessarily known how to get through those dog days. And it was August. It was mid-late August, I believe, in Atlanta when that particular night happened. But I remember that was a gut punch that we just really never recovered from. But I do think going into the end of that year, having a taste of that success early in the season against teams like the Cardinals, the Cubs, the teams in our division that had historically over the last 15 years given us a lot of trouble, we had success against those teams. And we saw that, number one, as a challenge going into 2013, but we also saw it as a stepping stone and a learning curve to say, you know what, we didn't finish the season the way we wanted to, but we did some good things. We have some really good pieces here. And going into the 13th season, Neil Huntington and his group put together a really good group of players. And I remember the first couple of days of spring training, going to meetings and looking around and being like, whoa, okay, Kutch is here, Pedro's here, Garrett Jones, Starling Marte, Polanco, Russell Martin, AJ Burnett. We're looking around and go, whoa, we got a really good opportunity here. And again, we got out of the gates pretty well, and we were able to get to the All-Star break, and we were on the positive side of things in the win-loss column, and we felt like we had an opportunity to add in a couple pieces, and we did that and gave ourselves a great opportunity going into that postseason of 2013. But that was getting over that hump again in that August, that late July to early September. That was a huge part to us. But having gone through the 12 of not getting that done, I think that prepared us going into that 2013 end of that season and into the playoffs.
What was that champagne like? As a Pittsburgh kid who's an absolute yinzer, what was that champagne like the first time?
Man, I tell you, I remember in 2013, Garrett Cole and Yu Darvish pitched in Texas, And that was the game that we clinched our first winning season, not the playoffs, the first winning season in 20 years. And I was lucky enough to make the last out, a ground ball to me through to Gabby Sanchez, I believe, with first base. And I said, give me the ball. Give me the ball. And he's like, what do you want this ball for? You know, somebody was on the mound. I don't think Garrett threw a complete game, but somebody closed it down, probably Grilly. And they usually give the ball to a guy if he gets a save. And I was like, give me the ball. I want the ball. And finally, I explained to him, I was like, you have no idea the significance of this baseball. Like, this has been 20 years of losing baseball for the city of Pittsburgh and this organization. Like, this is a symbol of hope, of where we were to where things are going. And I know it sounds a little cliche and it's a little bit nerdy, but I felt like that was such a significant moment in the organization at that 2013 game in mid-September. And then, of course, clinching the playoffs. The champagne, it tasted so much sweeter. Just understanding so much, being the biggest Pirate fan as a kid, and watching Andy Van Slyke and Bobby Bonilla and Barry Bonds, like, those were my guys. Jeff Kent, all these guys, those were my guys. I would go sit in peanut heaven at Three Rivers Ballpark and watch these guys. And Andy Van Slyke was my favorite, just to watch run around. And when I had the opportunity to wear number 18 as a Pirate, I jumped on it. So just super, super sweet and super fortunate to be where I was that time and being able to make an impact individually, but more so from a team perspective.
Do you see yourself as a Pirate legend in that moment in 2013? Do you see yourself as a Pirate legend? Two-time Pittsburgh Male Athlete of the Year in high school. Like, you were going to go play football and baseball. You get drafted in the first round. Did you see yourself at that moment in 13 as a Pirates legend?
I don't think so. I really don't. I don't know. I was brought up somewhat in humble beginnings from the standpoint of the Pittsburgh Around mantra was very much football centric as kids. So I kind of was brought up in that mindset of, like, next play, and you're only as good as your last play type of thing, and you're only as good as your next play, whatever that saying goes. And I think that I just felt very fortunate to be a part of that. And so I don't necessarily think that I saw myself as a legend. I think that I kind of saw myself as somebody that was very fortunate to be where I was at that time and to be surrounded by really good players and coaches and an organization that was committed to winning at that time. And to go through the mud and to come out on the other side was really something special. So I was the youngest of four. I'm the youngest of four. So anytime that I felt some sort of braggadocious way or got out of line, I was knocked down pretty quickly, a couple pegs. So I don't think I ever saw myself in any other capacity, but, like, I want to help, I want to win, and I want to have fun.
That's why I felt like I needed to give you a hug, because you were the youngest, and I would go to give you a hug, and you would push me away and be like, I don't need that. I don't need that from you.
Any hug from you, Eric, is a good hug, except when you get a little overzealous, and then it turns into a back crack and a possible trip to the chiropractor.
That's fair. That's fair. I was actually just looking up Andy Van Slyke's numbers compared to your numbers. You are very, very close. Does that make you feel?
Wow.
Does that make a 10-year-old Neil Walker more proud of you, or a 37-year-old Neil Walker, or 38-year-old now Neil Walker?
Yeah, probably both. I actually didn't. I'm gonna have to go look up kind of the numbers now, and I never thought about that. But I don't know what it is. I just have this vision of being at Three Rivers Stadium, and I got to go to the 92 or 93 All-Star game in Pittsburgh and got to have a Frank Thomas autograph that I still have. But Andy Van Slyke was just always my dude. I always gravitated towards him. And I didn't even want to be an outfielder. I didn't even like outfield. I was, an infielder at the time as a middle schooler and youngster. But I just remember him just burning up the turf in center field at Three Rivers Stadium and hearing Lanny Fratteri, at nighttime in at my house or my grandma's house in the evening times with my siblings. Just pure nostalgia from those early 90s baseball Pirates teams. But it also drove me because I wanted to be like Andy. So I probably never got to his level, especially the things that he accomplished. But I felt like I got almost the most out of my talents and was very fortunate to have a nice career.
You are more Pittsburgh than Heinz ketchup. You know that? Like you are like if you could give me like an aught or like a Yinzer of some kind, like then it would just solidify it. But I want to take you to now we're in the playoffs, all right?
Yep.
What is your remembrance of the Cueto moment? Because we've had Russ has done a Legends territory. We've talked to AJ Burnett about different stuff. So take us to that moment, the Cueto moment, which unfortunately for the Pirates, fans want more of those types of moments. And it's really a fan moment. And to me, it shows why Bob Nutting as an owner needs to pay more and needs to be wanting to win more because these fans are ravenous. My brother-in-law was at that game. I want to hear your viewpoint of it.
Yeah, I mean, going into the playoffs in 13, it was we didn't even know what to expect, especially that wild card game against Cincinnati. And I think Andrew McCutchen called for a blackout with everybody wear black and see if we can make it, as aggressive and as daunting as it could possibly be. And man, I still remember being in the clubhouse, and for you, Eric, you catchers, you guys are out there 45 minutes before the game, but like that gap between 45 and 30 minutes, there's still guys and it's very quiet in the clubhouse and you're getting ready and you're starting to mosey out. And I remember kind of hearing like rumblings and hearing like, it sounded like almost thunder, and I'd never heard it before. And I came to realize that 35 minutes before the game, there basically wasn't a seat not occupied at that time. And it was the crowd. It was above the concrete, layers and layers of concrete in the clubhouse. You could hear the crowd in Pittsburgh, and you got out. And I know, at least for me, the goosebumps that I felt at that moment, I know a lot of other people felt it because I've asked them. And just to have that experience and to know that how long it had been since that moment had happened, a playoff baseball game in Pittsburgh, I took a lot of pride in that, and I was very, very fortunate and very excited to be a part of that. And of course, we win that game, and we go on to a 5-game series with St. Louis that we go to Game 5 at their place, and they had a big home run. I think Carlos Beltran had a 3-run home run in the 6th or 7th inning that kind of did us away. But man, it was just incredible. And yeah, you wish that you could bottle those moments up. And of course, the next 2 years we play in the playoffs and play playoff baseball. And but that first go round in 2013 after 20 years was something that I don't know if you can recreate. But in the grand scheme of things are moving in the right direction here in Pittsburgh, and I hope that one day I'll be a different part of a playoff push from a booth perspective. And we'll see, because there are some super talented guys that are here now, and you hope that they're able to bring some pieces in and certainly, as you mentioned, spend some money on quality guys to get them over the hump and push them ultimately in the right direction.
How about the Cueto moment specifically? Were you in the cage hitting at that time? Because the cage in Pittsburgh is like up the steps, an elevator away. You got to get an Uber before there was Uber. Were you out on the field when that was happening? I mean, out in the dugout when that was happening?
No. So there were a couple of us that weren't all the way up in the cage, but there's a little room, if you can remember, that had a computer at that time. You could look up your last at bat, and I think I was doing that because I hit the inning before and just seeing where certain pitches were and what the umpire was giving a little bit more than we thought. And so I heard a rustling. I heard like, oh, and I come walking back out, and I asked, I don't remember who I asked. I said, what the heck happened? And he said, Cueto dropped the ball. And I didn't really think anything of it. And the next pitch, Russell Martin, bam, home run. And you're like, holy cow, was that meant to be? Like, this is wild, and the crowd is going nuts. And but I didn't see it. I barely heard it. And so my recollection is only from the images and videos and pictures that I see online, every year on the same day.
All right. So you guys have those years. Now all of a sudden there's talk of getting rid of Neil Walker, the golden child, all the things I just said, getting rid of Neil Walker because he's going to make close to $10 million and they don't want to go over that $10 million threshold. What is that feeling like when we just talked about like the ultimate feelings
Yeah.
What is that feeling like, seeing that, getting asked those questions constantly, like, oh, this could happen, that could happen? What was that like for you?
That was really hard. I'm not going to lie. That was really difficult because I only envisioned myself as a major league baseball player. One, and I was lucky to get there with hard work and some luck and some fortuitous events. And then I never envisioned myself in any other uniform but a Pirates uniform. So, as time went along, and of course, as anybody that's familiar with how the arbitration system works and this and that, you get to year one. And I had 4 years of arbitration because I was a Super 2. So I get to year 2 and I'm making X, and then I get to year 3 and I'm supposed to make X, and I go to an arbitration hearing with the Pirates and lose. And that was an awakening moment from a business baseball mind perspective, because I started to see the game a little bit differently, and not that I ever had any other thoughts of still wanting to be a Pirate and still wanting to get better as a baseball player. But you sit in an arbitration case and you hear some of the stuff that is being said about you. That's very difficult. And then you lost it on top of it, and then you got to get back in line in spring training, and they're patting you on the butt and saying, "Hey, you're our leader, you're our guy, let's go." And you're kind of like, well, this is kind of strange, this is kind of odd. So when the rumblings started happening that I was potentially going to get traded, I was like, man, this is we got to make something happen. We got to try to make something happen. And in a lot of instances, in a smaller market team or a mid-low market team, if you're not willing to kind of budge to a certain degree, it's going to be tough to get something completely done. And from a 5,000-foot view, that's basically what happened. I had my thoughts on what I thought was fair, and was willing to kind of meet somewhere near what I felt was fair, and that just ended up not being the case. And of course, after the 2015 season, I get traded to New York.
Can you tell us how close they were? Because I know there is a Neil Walker 2013 in middle school going, wait a minute. Now he's an adult saying, wait a minute, we could have had Neil Walker. We could have extended this period longer. So how close were you guys?
Well, the biggest issue was at that time, as I mentioned, a 4-year arbitration guy and having success in those first 2 years and being able to stay healthy and all that. The looming situation was the qualifying offer. So essentially the qualifying offer wasn't being viewed as on the table for the Pirates, where it was being viewed on the table for myself and my agency. So that was kind of the sticking point, was like, well, hey, we're in year 3 here. We see where these numbers are going. And if I get to year 4 and I'm still playing on a year contract, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to get the qualifying offer, which I ended up getting after the 2015 season with the Mets. So that was the biggest issue, was that the qualifying offer wasn't being taken into consideration by the Pirate side. And I felt like I was really short-sighting myself of getting that far and having to go through 4 years of arbitration and still being on the wrong side of 30 once that 4th year ended, but still having the qualifying offer on the table. And when I look back, I'm so happy that I did it, because any deal that I potentially had wouldn't have come close to what I ended up making in my career.
Yeah, no doubt. So you're saying you earned everything that you got because of
we played it right. Yeah, we played it right.
It was maybe a grind in the moment. You would have rather had had the long-term contract. I get it. What was the most hurtful thing that they said in arbitration to you? Because we had Burns on our show, Foul Territory. We had Burns on there, and he was basically told across the table that he had like a stretch of 3 starts where he lost them the opportunity to make the playoffs in 2022, I think it was. Yeah, 22. And that was their argument. So what was the most hurtful thing that you heard from the other side of the table from the Pirates?
Yeah, probably that I was a terrible base runner. That was probably the one thing that they said. And I was by no means a fleet-footed guy, but I was somewhat opportunistic, especially early in my career before I had back problems. So it wasn't necessarily stealing bases, but it was getting good secondaries, getting good reads, first to third, second to home, first to home type stuff. I was pretty successful in that. and they were able to find some statistics and some metrics that basically said that I was a terrible base runner. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is garbage. I know that I'm a good base runner. And so I don't know what you're saying. This is, and they go, well, you know, X, Y, and Z. This is what the league average looks like, and the above average, the below average. You're way down here. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess if you tell me I'm a bad base runner, then I'm a bad base runner. Yeah. So that was hurtful.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate that. All right, so there was no way they were going to give you a qualifying offer, because a qualifying offer was more than $10 million a year, and they never wanted to pay anybody more than $10 million a year until recently. They gave Ke'Bryan Hayes his first year of his contract was $10 million. It was like, oh wow, mind blowing. Yeah. Now it's below $10 million. Did you watch the whole Brian Reynolds saga play out and feel for Brian? Did you feel like he was maybe you fast forward 10 years?
To some degree, we visually we've seen owner Bob Nutting around a lot more the last couple of years. He's made an effort to be very involved in spring training. He's made an effort to be around the guys and around the coaching staff a lot more at home, which is awesome. That's what you want to see. So when the rumbling started, when Ke'Bryan gets signed, you're like, oh, this is great. You got your third baseman of the future, and and you're getting Gold Glove defense here across the board. And when you hear the rumblings of Brian Reynolds, and you're cross your fingers because you know how good of a player this guy is, you're thinking to yourself, well, this is they're going to have to stretch to get Brian Reynolds. He's somewhat, as you mentioned, somewhat in that same situation, that year 2, 3. And I'm not sure if he's a Super 2 guy or not, but you're thinking to yourself, this is going to be a grind for him to get something done. And it seemed like it was going in that direction, and something that seemed like he was going to have to really cave in a little bit to make something happen. And at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, well, it seems like he got what he wanted, and the security of it and the age and all that stuff seemed to somewhat make sense and match up. So, but to a degree, when he was going through it, and I didn't have many conversations outside of just giving him support. Hey man, good luck. I hope you get what you want, type of stuff. You certainly felt like he was getting put through the grinder, because I had certainly been there before. But as I mentioned, I think things are changing in Pittsburgh. Maybe not. I don't think you're necessarily going to see the overspending type thing. They're going to be very, very monotonous about the guys they bring in. We just saw Marco Gonzalez get traded for. I think that's a guy that is going to have a good opportunity, like Rich Hill, like Vince Velasquez, like some of these guys they like to bring in on 1-year deals and go out and play and see what you got. You're going to have freedom. There's not going to be anybody behind you. Go be our 4th, 5th starter. That's great. So, but there's certainly they need a lot of pitching this offseason. They need a couple position players, but there's some exciting players on the horizon, and there's some exciting players, obviously O'Neal Cruz being at the top of that list, that are going to hopefully push this organization to the next level.
So opportunistic signings because of the fact that you have part of the Walker lineage in the dugout. Tell me about the Walker, Lang, Kelly family tree of baseball. Talking about your uncle. What's your uncle's first name? I forget what.
His name is Chip Lang.
Chip Lang. Your late father, Tom, played in the big leagues.
Yep.
And your brother-in-law, Don Kelly. What does this family tree look like? And if you had an Olympic competition, who in that entire family tree, now the women are involved, your sister's involved, your mom was an athlete, your grandmother was an athlete, am I right?
Yeah. It was. Yeah, we've had some really good athletes in our family. Both of my brothers played. One played in the minor leagues for the Tigers until about 2005, and my other brother pitched at George Mason. And my brother-in-law, as you mentioned, married to my sister, Don Kelly. He's the bench coach for the Pirates, and a guy that's his managerial opportunities have swirled around him for years. He had a great baseball playing career as essentially a utility guy, and he's in a great situation. He's here in Pittsburgh, where he and my sister and their children live close to us, and he's able to sleep in his own bed when they're playing at home. Get to see the kids as much as you possibly can as a professional player and coach. And he does a great job. He's terrific for that job. He's very, very good at it. So, but if I had to pick, I'd probably say my sister would win all. I know. I remember trying to play basketball against her when she was playing at Wagner University in Staten Island, which I believe she still holds the records for points. And she got on like a weightlifting routine after she got there, and she got bigger and stronger. And she was a forward. She's about 5'11", 6 foot tall. And I tried to play, go down low and try to beat her up a little bit and play one-on-one. And she just beat the crap out of me. And I was like, yep, you're way meaner than I am. You're way stronger than I am. We're not even going to debate this. You can take the cake as the best athlete in the family. I'll stay in the background. The rest of us will stay out of your way.
This is an all-state basketball, football, baseball player who is admitting his sister absolutely worked him underneath the hoop.
I got some humility, Kratz. What do you want me to say?
AJ Burnett was on one of our previous legends. And do you know the story about him parking in Bob Nutting's space? And after that, I want to hear your best AJ Burnett story.
Oh, buddy. So AJ, the players and coaching staff and front office types park underneath the right field wall at PNC Park. And there's not many spots down there. And especially, I've learned now, especially as a broadcaster showing up a little bit later, there is very, very few spots, and it's tight down there. So they have it almost gapped up to where it's every player, every coach, a couple front office people, and then, of course, there's about 5 spots for Bob Nutting and his guests and the owners and whatnot. And AJ, we called AJ JA on his pitching day because he would be as happy-go-lucky on day 1, 2, 3, 4, and then day 5 when his start came around, you were like, don't look at him, don't look him in the eyes. It was like an angry wife. Just keep your distance, stay away. Hopefully he doesn't come anywhere near you. And he came in one day and he was hot. The guy told him, hey, you can't really park there. And he's like, I'm pitching tonight. I'm basically going to do whatever I want. And he came in and he kind of mentioned it to somebody in the clubhouse, like, there's something going on. There's no parking spots today. What the heck's going on? There was only one parking spot left. The guy didn't want to give it to me. And I think, they moved it, or he tossed the keys to somebody and they told him that he had to move his car. And he basically told him, you can move my car if you want, but I'm not doing it. I'm going to park wherever I want. And it so happened to be the owner's parking spot. And down the line, AJ for some reason didn't recognize him one day in the dugout when he was getting ready to go for a start. There was some big event going on that day, and Bob was there, and he just passed right by Bob. Didn't even say hi, nothing. And Bob was, hey AJ, how you doing today? And AJ just thought it was just some, I don't know what he thought. And eventually he realized everybody was just standing there in shock, like, oh my gosh, you just stiffed Bob Nutting. There's that's not going to go over well. But and of course, if you know AJ, especially at the end of his career, he was focused on one thing, and that was punching tickets. That's it. He was focused on striking guys out and winning. That is all he wanted to do. And so when it came back around, I mean, we had the best laugh about it of all time. And he was still like, find me a parking spot. I'm the starting pitcher. Like, this is ridiculous. How could you not give the starting pitcher a parking spot? And he had a pretty valid point, but certainly an aggressive move to go park in the owner spot and basically tell the guy parking cars down there to go kick rocks, deal with it later. And probably my favorite AJ story. We were traveling from LA to Colorado, and it was time where, as you know, Kratz, the rookie, not so much rookie hazing, but the rookie dress up type of stuff was starting to go away, and you had to get more creative with it. And so AJ had a great idea. He said, all right, we're all going to do it. Everybody's going to dress up as Marvel characters. He's really into Batman, obviously, and all this stuff. And so the plane ride from LA to Denver, everybody's dressed up as Marvel characters. I got a gigantic Ninja Turtle head that's about this big, Ninja Turtle costume. There was 4 of us. One was Aramis Ramirez, if you can believe that. I think he was 36, 37 years old at the time. And everybody's dressed up. we get on the bus, when we land in Denver, and AJ says, all right, rookies, come on up here. You put these costumes on. Well, there were about 7 or 8 at the time. There were quite a few. And he puts one guy in a gorilla costume, and he puts 7 or 8 guys in penguin outfits. And he says, Bussy, I need you to stop 2-3 blocks from this hotel. And it was still light out. It wasn't sketchy, anything like that. And he says, all right, the penguins or the gorilla, you're going to get off first 3 blocks away. Penguins, you're going to get off 2 blocks away. If the gorilla catches you, you're out of the game. And if any penguins get back to the hotel without getting caught by the gorilla, you're going to win something. And it was just, we were hanging out, we were having dinner after. But he said, there's only one catch. The penguins, you have to waddle. You got to waddle the entire way back there, and the gorilla gets to go as fast as he can. And I think of 7 guys, I think probably 5 of them got caught. So that gorilla, who happened to be Elias Diaz, was the winner of that evening, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
Do you remember what he won?
I think we put a pot of money together. I think we put for every guy he caught, he got like $100 or something like that. So I think it ended up being a $500, $600 night for the kid. So that's a big night for a rookie.
That's a huge night. Yeah, that's cash. And now, All-Star, MVP of the All-Star game. Yeah. It's his career's come a long way since being in a gorilla costume, running down the street chasing penguins.
Running down Larimer Avenue in downtown Denver. Yeah.
Larimer Avenue at the high altitude. So he was probably breathing heavy, but he got paid for it. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Where do you see the Pirates going from here? You talk about all these stories, the guys that you guys had that fit into pieces. You had Andrew McCutchen, an MVP. You had Neil Walker, a Silver Slugger. You had Pedro Alvarez, a Silver Slugger, home run champion. How does this team that you watch on a daily basis, living right up the street from them, return to that and then maintain it? Because we can't just constantly be having, they win, tear it down. Oh, they win, tear it down. And you said, Bob, it's changing some things, more advantageous signings. Where do you see them going? How long is it going to take for us to get another blackout in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and you know what? I think the barometer has been set these last couple of years with this wave of guys that has been essentially in AA and AAA with, Henry Davis and O'Neal Cruz. And obviously guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes and Brian Reynolds that are solidified major leaguers. So it'll be really interesting. I'll be watching a close eye in spring training to see what kind of camp battles that might be going on between guys like Peguero are going to get opportunities probably to take advantage of being the everyday second baseman, and first base is a little bit questionable. But you guys got guys like Jared Triolo that finished the season really strong. But I'm always kind of looking at things from the offensive lens. And of course, the biggest question with especially guys getting hurt this offseason in the pitching department has been what does the starting rotation look like? So that's going to be a big piece for Ben Cherington and his group. And as I mentioned, Marco Gonzalez gets picked up. So that's one piece that you assume that's going to be part of that Mitch Keller rotation. Johan Oviedo, that was just a real gut punch, at least from a standpoint of longevity and what he accomplished, starting every single game the entire season, going into that 24 season. You had a lot of optimism in that department, and that seems to not be the case anymore. But I have always kind of seen things from the lens offensively of like continuity. And what I mean by that is I always felt like if you were platooning on a team in more than 2 areas, and throw the catcher out the window. So you're talking 7 guys. If you were platooning in more than 2 areas, it was really difficult for guys to get in a groove. And I played with guys like Corey Hart and Gabby Sanchez and Garrett Jones, who learned how to do that from a very young age, and Garrett knew that if a righty was on the mound, there's a good chance he was playing. Gabby Sanchez knew if a lefty was on the mound, he was probably playing. And my thought, especially before this last season, was like, okay, there's about 3 of those 7 spots that are somewhat being platooning. If you could get that down to 2 or 1 going into this 24 season, you're going to have a good idea of what the lineup looks like on a daily basis, and you're not going to have guys moving around quite as much. I've always been a strong believer that, like, for instance, for me, when I got solidified in the major leagues, I wanted to know if the the skipper wanted me to hit second or fifth, because I felt like if I was hitting second and I was hitting in front of Andrew McCutchen, I was going to be more selective at the plate. I was going to work the count, take more pitches, maybe not be as aggressive in off hitters counts, to let the guys behind me see more pitches, but also put more pressure on the pitcher to not walk me and to maybe give me a better pitch to hit later in the count. And hitting behind Andrew, you were going to get less to hit because there was a good chance Andrew was going to be on base. He was on base probably 40% of the time, especially during his MVP year. So I see that there is less of that going on. O'Neill Cruz is not coming out of the lineup. He's left-handed. Brian Reynolds, they're not coming out of the lineup. Pagero, possibly right-handed hitting second baseman. He may not come out of the lineup. You got Andy Rodriguez and Henry Davis, one switch hitter, one right-handed hitter. You have some guys in the corners. Jack Sawinski, who probably is only going to hit against righties, you would assume. So you really only have two spots, most likely that left field spot and potentially the first base spot at this point, that look like platoon spots. So for me, that's a positive sign. And of course, there's injuries. Of course, there's guys not maybe playing up to their potential. But I hope that that's a continued trend because that continuity for me was so important. Guys like Jordy Mercer hitting 8-hole every single day for us during our 13 through 15 stretch, or 14, 15. And he never complained. It was the worst spot to hit in the NL. Of course, as most people tell you, you might get one pitch a night to hit. You're going to walk a couple of times, which is great, but you got to embrace it, and you have to understand what your role is in those spots. And in today's game, you see a lot more of like, okay, let me get on time. Let me see how high and how far I can hit balls no matter where I am in the lineup. And if I go 1 for 5 with a 2-run home run and 4 strikeouts, I kind of see that as somewhat of a positive thing. And of course, that's getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's kind of the way I'm seeing the game in this perspective, and especially for the Pirates organization right now.
Who's the guy then? Who's the guy? Who is your Andrew McCutchen for the current Pittsburgh Pirates? I think O'Neill Cruz, the injury derailed what his hype, whether it's, real or not. Physical tools don't necessarily mean that you're going to be the best player. Right. Who is your Andrew McCutchen? Because there is no team that is worth their weight in gold in the playoffs that doesn't have their Andrew McCutchen. Look at the teams that now. Phillies have Bryce Harper. Whether you think he's the superstar or not, they have the Diamondbacks have Corbin Carroll. The Rangers have Corey Seager. Who is the Pirates guy?
That's a really good question, and I'm racking my brain. I'm gravitating toward Ke'Bryan Hayes, and for the reason of, in my opinion, he's probably the best defensive player in all of baseball. And that's, people are going to argue this and that and this and that, but you get to watch him on a daily basis. He's making plays that your jaw drops, but then you're like, well, I just saw him do that yesterday too. Turning double plays from almost the outfield, barehanded balls, slow rollers, things like that. But we saw a shift in him offensively at the end of this year that was pretty impressive. He's always been a spray the ball around the yard type of guy, stay inside the ball, does a really good job of using the 4-hole, especially with 2 strikes and guys in scoring position, always has that in his back pocket. Well, it seemed in August that he was going to make a concerted effort to get the bat barrel out. When he started to do that, he started to lose some balls. He started to pull to the pull side, and you're thinking to yourself, whoa, if you got a guy in Ke'Bryan Hayes that's playing not above quality defense, but top of the line defense, and you could potentially put this guy in the 2, 3, 4 hole in your lineup every single day, and he's giving you the type of production that he was giving you at the end of the year, this past year, you have yourself a superstar. You have yourself an Andrew McCutchen. The guy can get on base, he hits for power, hits for average, he can steal some bases, he plays really the best defense in the league. That's your guy. It'd be easy to say O'Neill Cruz. It'd be easy to say Brian Reynolds. Those guys are terrific players. I think O'Neill Cruz, I think he's got to get closer to that 1,000 at-bat mark to have a really good gauge of what offensively we have with him. But the tools, as you mentioned, Eric, are off the charts. It's incredible. You watch batting practice, of O'Neal Cruz like you would Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. I mean, it's out of this world. It's incredible. So, but as you mentioned, you have to get. For me, you got to get to that 400, 500 at bat plateau 1 year, up to 800, 900, 1200. Once you get close to that 1,000, you have a very good idea of what you have, minus situations like this year where you lose a little bit of progression with an injury. So if I have to answer that question, I'm thinking in the back of my head about guys like Henry Davis and guys like O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds, but for me, and Mitch Keller for that matter, but for me, it's Key Brian Hayes.
All right. Last one for a true Yinzer. What's your favorite pierogi?
Oh, man. Jalapeno Hana might be one of my favorites. Sauerkraut Saw, that might be another one. But if I got to choose, it'd probably be Potato Pete.
Potato Pete. You look like a Potato Pete guy. And are Permanente sandwiches overrated?
Well, it depends. Do you like fries and absolute deliciousness on your sandwich, or do you not? That's a question for you, Eric.
That is, I mean, there's not even a question. Who doesn't like French fries? Like, you may not eat French fries, but who doesn't like French fries?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, you're either going to, let's be honest, if you go to Permanente Brothers and you don't want the fries on the sandwich, you're probably going to eat them on the side. So,
right. Like, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's no cheesesteak, but it's cool. I mean, you guys, like, every Batman needs a Robin, and Pittsburgh is Philly's Robin. So that's cool.
That's right. Yeah.
Here's my last one. What year are the Pirates making the playoffs again?
You know, I think they make a strong push for a wild card spot this year. I really do. But the biggest hurdle that they have to somewhat overcome, though, is not necessarily guys playing to their expected level. It's a situation like this past year when you're one of your best players got in O'Neal Cruz. What happens if that guy goes down for 2 months, and in his case for 5 months? Do we have at least some guys, whether it's in AAA or prospects, that are coming up that can soften that blow? Because in organizations, in a lot of these small market organizations, not necessarily just Pittsburgh, that's always the tough thing. Like, on the surface, you look on paper and in spring training, you're like, wow, this is a really good team. When I looked at this Pirates team in spring training, especially offensively, I was like, this is a pretty good team. And you take O'Neal Cruz out of that mix, your 2, 3, 4 gets completely blown up. And that's exactly what happened this past year. And they started off really well and just kind of teetered off as the season went along. So I can't predict. I guess I can't predict if this is going to be the year 2024. But if I had to give a hard guess, I'd say 2025. But I really think they make a strong push for a wild card spot this year.
Okay, that's positive. That's good to know. I mean, fans are looking for it. It's been a minute. You know, they love you to death, but they would like to, see who the next team looks like in playoff contention and get the Cueto chance going again. So, Neil, great to see you, dude. Great to catch up. Appreciate the time. Keep crushing it on TV, doing those games. We'll be watching this season. Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on. Always fun. Great to catch up.
Yeah, appreciate you. And for everyone else watching here on Legends Territory, for more information about your favorite former players, hit up baseballalumni.com. Thank you so much for watching Legends Territory. We'll see you for the next one.